Winter storm warnings continue across much of the Gulf Coast and into the southeast. It was a not only a record-breaking day, but an historic day for many areas along the Gulf Coast. And we're going to talk about this tonight in detail. And of course, we still have the Arctic cold that covers just about everybody east of the Mississippi. The West is quiet. And this is the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. And you can support the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast by shopping on Amazon using our referral link at the top of the chat board or on the descriptor to this podcast. It's very simple. Just go on there, search for whatever you're searching for, buy it. Amazon throws us back a little bit of coin for sending you there via the referral link. And it doesn't cost you 1 cent. Okay, you just buy your stuff and pay for it. Amazon throws us some coin out of their pocket. I know a number of you have done this, and thank you very much for doing it. We appreciate your support by shopping our referral link on Amazon. Joe, I woke up this morning, and the first thing I did was to look on my phone, and I pulled up weather.gov, and I'm looking across the Gulf states, and I see a cluster of orange. And still somewhat groggy, I thought, they didn't put up a blizzard warning today. And yes, sure enough. And I don't, now, to be fair, criteria for blizzards have changed over the years. And, we don't really have much knowledge about what may have happened many, many years ago. But in my time, I have never seen a blizzard warning put up for anybody anywhere in the Gulf Coast. So that was mind blowing. And by the way, it verified. Looking at what the observations that were going on were verified. I don't know why, we were talking about this before we started on the air. I don't know why they didn't put up a blizzard warning for New Orleans because it was. I mean, they had, the lakefront airport had gusts to, they were gusting to 50 miles an hour for hours with heavy snow. And I think there are two records that I think were so far that I know of, possibly three, but two. The first one is New Orleans. This is their all-time record snowfall, and the old record was set back in 1895, which was like around 8 inches, and I've seen reports of 9 or 10 in and around the New Orleans area. I don't know if that's going to be the number they go with, but it looks to me like they'd set this was an all-time record snowstorm, and the first one since 1963. So 62 years in the wilderness, and they got another snowfall. The other one was in Florida, Pensacola, and they were still snowing. This was a number of hours ago, at 5.2 inches, and that is the greatest statewide snowfall report ever in the state of Florida.
First of all, I saw on Fox Weather, we were watching some of that. By the way, Fox, in my opinion, I think Renato will agree with me, when you make the comparison between the Weather Channel and Fox Weather, I will take Fox Weather hands down, because they seem to have all bases covered. Everything that you want to know, especially about an anomaly such as this, is better shown on Fox Weather as opposed to the Weather Channel. But that having been said, Fox Weather called it a generational storm, and I have to disagree with that. No, I disagree, because a generation is equivalent to roughly 25, 30 years. I mean, for example, my grandson is separating from my son and my grandson. It comes at about 25 or 30-year intervals. This is a multi-generational storm.
Yeah, okay, we could argue about that. Yeah, all right, that's fine. I'm good with either one.
I mean, you yourself said the last time they had something like this, even remotely like this in New Orleans, was 1963. That's like over 60 years ago.
Yeah, I know.
And then prior to that,
a bunch of people have come and gone in that time.
And prior to that, you said 1895, and that was yet another 65 plus years. So
Well,
this is
how
an
about
event.
how about we say it's a once in a lifetime for for those places along the immediate Gulf Coast. It could be a once in a lifetime event what they experience
Well,
today.
then again, we could be talking about something along the lines of Halley's Comet. The Halley's Comet comes around every 76 years, but it's possible. And there, in fact, last time it came around in 1986, there were people who remembered it from 1910. And if, indeed, if you were born, let's say in 1955 or 56, like I was, certainly I might remember a 1963 snowstorm, and now here it is, second time in my lifetime. But maybe once or possibly twice a century do you get something like this. And Joe, also the baseball announcers, the guys who do play by play, like the late great Bob Uecker, who just passed away a week or so ago. Sometimes something will happen on the ball field, and some veteran announcer who's been around for 30, 40, 50 years will say, I've been around for X number of years. I've never seen anything like that, maybe an unassisted triple play or whatever. And that, for you and I, this is very much like that.
Yeah.
You and I have been around for such a long time, and neither one of us can remember seeing anything remotely like this in New Orleans. And you were down in New Orleans, for
I worked
God's
in
sake.
New Orleans for 3 years, and we had one. We had some when I was there. We said the first months I was there was in November and December of 1983 and into January, and we had a brutally cold outbreak. We saw temperatures down there that got down to like single digits for like several nights in a row. And we had a freezing rain event in there too, in one of those while I was there. But nothing like this. I mean, nothing at all like this. I mean,
The
no.
late great David Ludlum, the great weather historian who passed away about 20 years ago. I mean, he would have loved seeing something like this because he again was a chronicler of incredible events like this, and this is by far and away an incredible weather event. And whether or not I doubt we'll ever see something like this again in our lifetime, but this is an unbelievable situation. And to go along with that, it was very cold this morning. Made a big mistake on my Facebook forecast, Joe, because I forgot to take into account the snow cover from Sunday. And when I was looking over the temperatures early this morning, and my eyes popped out when I saw Montgomery in Orange County Airport, at 11 degrees below zero, for God's sake.
Yes, I
And
saw that. Yes, I saw that.
that topped that topped everybody. I mean, I did
Yeah,
2 below zero in Poughkeepsie. That was pretty good.
yeah.
5 below in
Sussex,
Danbury, Connecticut.
yeah, Sussex in northwest New Jersey was -10.
But 11 below. So on my forecast for tonight, I said that I made an adjustment from the machine numbers, taking into account that, and just I took into account what happened last night and assumed that it'll happen tonight, which is why for a place like Montgomery, and I may very well have gone overboard here, but I said for deep snow-covered rural locations tomorrow morning, assuming the skies become clear later tonight, could get down as low as maybe 15 below.
Mhm.
And I here in Putnam Valley, my thermometer registered 5 at 8:01 a.m. I'm anticipating tomorrow morning temperatures locally getting 2 or even below zero here. So we'll
Well,
see how that transpires.
well, we said over the weekend, as far as the temperatures were concerned with this cold air mass, that if we put down a snow cover, you can knock 5 degree at least 5 degrees off whatever the machine numbers were, and that you were going to get below zero readings inland. So anyone that
Well, the
was
machine
watching the
numbers,
Joe and Joe, you know, Weather Show
the,
podcast when we said that should have had that on their bingo card.
the machine numbers for Montgomery yesterday was for 5 degrees above zero, and again it ended up 11 degrees below. So we had a difference, thanks to the snow cover, of about 16 degrees
Yeah.
from
Well, now
what the
if you ever ask the question for Long Island, the Brookhaven record is 23 degrees below zero, and that came after one of the big snowstorms in 1960,
the
January
Kennedy
20.
inaugural storm. Yes.
Yeah, right after that. So it was like January 22nd or 23rd was 23 degrees below zero. Whatever. I may have the date not right, but it was somewhere in the low 20s on the date.
And actually,
23 below zero.
tomorrow morning's record at White Plains Westchester County Airport was 10 below zero. Of course, we know out in the eastern Long Island area, they radiate like no other place on Earth, which is why they were like 22 below, and White
Right.
Plains could only manage at 10 below. But
Yeah.
tomorrow morning, even if the temperature gets down to zero at White Plains, that's still going to miss the record by a good 10 degrees because, again, of that very same the aftermath of the Kennedy inauguration snowstorm of 1961.
I would throw the Pine Barrens in central and South Jersey in that mix of
Right.
places that radiate like crazy. I did see somebody, I don't know who it was, who posted the words climate change. Um, I'm not going to argue with you about whether it is or isn't climate change because we're really not going to know until 50 years go by. But this stuff has happened before, so you can't look at one particular weather event and say it's climate change. Okay.
Right.
And
Well,
the other thing,
as I said on Sunday night, when I did bring up the wonderful weather book that was compiled by David Ludlam of weather events that went back into the early 19th century, and in fact, in some cases, that was his second weather book. He also had info on weather events going back to the 18th century. Things like this in the 18th and 19th century happened. Maybe not on the same magnitude as what we saw this morning with 50-mile-an-hour winds, blizzard conditions, and 8 inches of snow in New Orleans, but they did have significant snowfalls across the Gulf coastal states and into northern sections of Florida and up along the Atlantic seaboard to Hatteras. They did see things like that, 50, 100, 150 years ago. That having been said, was climate change or global warming responsible for those events? Probably not. Oh, and the point I was making on Sunday is these crazy things happen from
right?
time to time. These anomalies, they don't happen very often, thankfully, but when they do happen, they happen. We saw it
Yeah.
happen today. I don't think we're going to see it happen. I mean, if this were due to, you know, climate change or global warming, my suspicions would be that if we see this again happen 2 or 3 years from now, or 5 years or 10 years from now, yeah, then maybe something's going on, something screwy in the atmosphere. But this just happened to be one of those crazy events where you had like 2 or 3 different things suddenly coincide at some kind of a teleconnection, a rare teleconnection of a sequence of events that occurred and caused this incredible scenario that we are seeing right now.
Uh, so again, Reuben Fairchild, you're not understanding what I'm getting at. What I'm getting at is to look at one single event, which we're looking at this one, and say it's climate change. You can't really do that. It's a day of
Oh, he's
weather.
missing
Is
the
the
mark. He's missing
You're
the mark.
missing the point.
He's bringing up. Well, since I've been watching the show, we've had 50 events: hottest
And we've
Atlantic
been the
temperature,
first ones to acknowledge that.
wildfire.
How many times have we said that? You and I have seen some really odd things happen in the last several years.
Yeah, but what we're saying right now is this event of snow and ice and cold across the Gulf coastal states and on into northern Florida. This is not a unique event. This has happened. It has not happened frequently, but it has happened 50, 60 years ago, 100 years ago, even 150 and 200 years ago. Can we, as I just asked that question 2 or 3 minutes ago, Mr. Fairchild, could we say 100 years ago when this happened, or 150 years ago when it happened, could we say global warming and climate change? I don't think so. This event that we're seeing today happens because of a confluence or a coming together of 2 or 3 special weather events that just happen to lock up with each other once in I'm going to say blue moon. No, once every 2 or 3 generations, something like this will happen. And what I'm saying is that if that is the case, we are not to expect anything like this to happen again until maybe the year 2070 or 2080. If it happens next year, if it happens 4 or 5 years from now again, if it happens 10 years ago again from now, yeah, then we're going to have to examine this and say this may have something to do with global warming or climate change. But if
Right.
we have to wait,
Well, that's
if we
why.
have to
That's
wait
why.
decades for this to happen again, I don't think it has
Right,
anything to
and
do with
that's why I'm
climate
saying
change.
we're not. You wouldn't know. You're not going to know the answer to the question for at least 40 or 50 years.
Right.
If this was a climate change event, or a climate change
I'll
resulting
let
event.
my grandson Julian, 50 or 60 years ago, come back and answer that question for Mr. Fairchild, if that indeed is the case.
Yes, and the other thing I
Because
would
as you know,
say is
The Joe and Joe show will continue long after we're gone, Joe. I'm sure that one
yes.
of your grandkids
Well,
and my
no, we'll
grandkids.
be here in 20. No, no. I mean, you and I are not booked. We'll be here in 2070 and doing the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, which is on Sunday through Thursday at 7:35 p.m. and the occasional Friday and Saturday when there's a storm around, which there won't be this week, so we won't be doing an extra show. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Make sure you turn your notifications on so you don't miss us. And of course, if you like the show, by all means, hit the like button. And the other thing I want to add is. Um, when this should at least point out to people who say stupid things like, and they are stupid, people who could say stupid things like it's never going to snow big in New York again. This at least would prove should exemplify the fact that yeah, it will snow big again in the Northeast and in the Mid Atlantic states. Okay, you just have to wait. You may have to wait, but it is, and it's a stupid statement to say that it's not going to. Okay, so let's just leave it at that. Those A word to the wise is sufficient. Those who aspire to such beliefs know who I am talking about, and we'll just leave it at that. Okay, so shall we?
Surely, let's go.
Yes. So let's look at what's going on right now. And I can tell you tonight, Joe, the Atlanta rush hour was fascinating because they were sitting on the edge of the snow all day, and around 3 o'clock this afternoon, a band of moderate snow, for the second time in less than 2 weeks, came up right at the beginning of the evening rush and put down 1 to 2 inches and this time around when temperatures were down closer to 20 than they were to 30. So Atlanta became this huge skating rink tonight. It was kind of interesting to watch it on the newscasts that I was switching around from one to another. And of course, I also did watch a little bit of the local Fox station in New Orleans, which I actually worked for. It's a Fox station now, it used to be an ABC station. I wanted to see, just exactly what was going on and to see blizzard. I mean, it was blizzard conditions. They had at least, this was about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. They had 6 or 7 inches of snow on the ground. The wind was howling, and the visibility was like, maybe 100 yards. And all I could see was the fronds of palm trees swaying
Yeah,
back and forth. It was just really, but the juxtaposition of that was just really bizarre.
it was quite amazing. I saw something like that again on Fox Weather this afternoon. They were showing some really great shots from a number of different locations. And thank you very much to Brandon Doherty, also known as Delaware Weather Guy. He said, I was busy in Delaware this weekend, yet I caught the shows in the background. So it's nice to know that and a lot of people tell me that, Joe. They say that they're doing work, typing away, doing something or cooking or whatever, and they have us in the background somewhere. And
Good. Well, no, we like that.
uh,
Being in the background is good. We like that. And you can, if you are watching from Delaware, you can follow Brandon Doherty on his Facebook page, Delaware Weather Guy. So there you go. Um, okay, so we've got winter storm warnings up still for southeast Louisiana, although the snow is pretty much done. We also have those warnings for the Florida Panhandle. You know, having these words come out of my mouth is just like it's just bizarre. Uh, Southern Alabama, they actually had to push the winter storm warnings up this afternoon further north to go north of Atlanta up until through early this afternoon. The warnings were south of Atlanta, but because of what was going on, they had to push them up. I never got to see there were some flurries here that I didn't even see, but I saw a few people mention it. That there were some flurries here in Union County, in North Georgia, which is right near the North Carolina state line. But I had it aloft on the radar all day, and temperatures here I don't think got much above 21 or 22 today. I mean, it's been really cold. I could see the snow, the Virga, but for the most part, it didn't make it reaching the ground. We have winter storm warnings up for the southern half of South Carolina, advisories for the north. We have winter storm warnings up for eastern North Carolina with advisories moving on the northwestern flank of that, and we have winter weather advisories and a winter storm warning in southeast Virginia. So just put it in your hat, folks. The fact that New Orleans today got more snow in one day than New York City has seen in the last 3 winters. So far, that to me is astounding. Now in Houston, I got some graphics that I'm pulling up from the Weather Service websites here. So this is you know these were estimated snow amounts, and then I looked at the actual snow amounts. They were pretty close from the automated weather stations there. So basically, 2 to 3 to 4 inches fell in downtown Houston, 1 to 2 inches in Galveston. That was another thing. Just seeing Galveston reporting, moderate snow was just another mind blowing moment. But you can see that once you go south and west of Houston, then you were talking about basically either trace amounts or just, a half an inch here or 3/10 there. And that was just about it. We still have all the cold weather that we're dealing with, of course, and we have cold weather advisories. I'm shaking my head about those. But we have cold weather advisories in a few areas where they have extreme cold weather warnings up in northern Ohio and in northwest PA, and also in the Appalachians, in West Virginia, and in the mountains in northwestern North Carolina, and also extreme cold weather warnings in southern Mississippi, southern Louisiana, and into southeast Texas. Uh, just an incredible day. In the boring west, we have a few winter weather advisories in northwest, northeast Wyoming and southeast Montana, and a couple of counties in central Montana with winter storm warnings. Red flag warnings are back up for parts of Southern California, so we didn't really need to see that. And what was interesting to me, look at this radar, Joe. Take a look at this radar. I mean, look at the northern edge. It's like a ruler from Boston, New York City, into Western Maryland. I mean, it's almost a straight line. So, I mean, this was basically a wave that developed on a stalled frontal boundary. It's not like the wave is strengthening or anything, but you had a beautiful overrunning setup into the Arctic air, and it's squeezing every ounce of moisture it can.
It's always been said in situations where you have coastal storms, especially up here in the Northeast, that sometimes when the cold air is so very strong that you have a very sharp line, and the cutoff line is often very difficult to forecast. And well, here you see a sharp cutoff line, folks. They don't get any sharper than this. And it looks like, Joe, that, and I think on the northern periphery of that line, it's mostly Virga. It's you're not seeing very much get down all the way to the ground, but still, that's about it. And what's going to happen over the course of tonight is high pressure is going to reinforce itself over the northeast and push that line slowly to the south, and skies, which right now are for the most part overcast, will turn mostly clear by later tonight, probably toward midnight. And if indeed it does, with the winds dying off almost to a dead calm, that plus whatever snow cover we still have, and there's quite a bit of snow cover up here in the Hudson Valley, that's going to set the stage for another big plummeting of the temperatures down to, well down into the single digits, and in many places even below zero, as was the case this morning.
I was just looking, I just got some snow amounts. You can see on the radar that the back edge of the snow is now pulling out of southeastern Louisiana. So in and around New Orleans, and I'm trying to just get the latest timestamp was from a station 2 miles, well, from a person 2 miles west southwest of New Orleans, 9.8 inches. 1 mile northwest of New Orleans. This was from a National Weather Service employee, 9.5. The airport has 8 inches on the ground. The airport is actually to the west of New Orleans. It's not in anywhere near downtown New Orleans at all. It's about 25 minutes to the west, and they reported 8 inches on the ground. I'm trying to see if there are any double-digit numbers here. I did see some, big amounts in near Lafayette. I'm just trying to check here. In Baton Rouge, looks like 8 inches in Baton Rouge, 6.3 in the downtown, and then just away from the downtown, they got eight. Uh, again, depending on now in Metairie, I used to live in Metairie, 9 inches. That's the Jefferson Parish, which is the next parish next to Orleans Parish. In Destrehan in St. Charles Parish, well, that was early this morning, so that's really not a good amount. Um, uh, Slidell on the North Shore, 6.8 as of 4:50. I mean, these are just numbers that I just could never have imagined seeing. And I think Youngsville, uh, Louisiana, which is just a handful of miles to the southeast of Lafayette, uh, early this afternoon had 9 inches on the ground, and 9.5 inches on the ground and counting. So I mean, it was just absolutely crazy. And you can see the radar, by the way. There is some snow aloft over Long Island and New Jersey. Uh, I wonder if they might be getting a few flurries. With the cold air, the air being so cold, it wouldn't take much to just generate a few flurries, especially if there's a northeast wind. You could get a little bit of ocean effect going on there in South Jersey and over parts of the Delmarva Peninsula. But the real steady stuff is now moved up into North Carolina. You're getting some bands in there, and you've got some rather heavy um, precip in the darker greens. Is a band that's just south of Atlanta, well south of Atlanta now, closer to just south of Macon, that is moving eastward. And then in southeast Georgia, you start to get into the areas that are not only dealing with snow, but also dealing with sleet and freezing rain. So that's got to be fun. The WPC precip forecast for the Northeast and Northern Mid-Atlantic states is a tenth of an inch or less for the next 7 days. We're in a very dry pattern here. The moisture that's off the southeast coast, along the southeast coast, a half to 3/4 of an inch is what you're seeing now. So that's front end loaded. The precip that you see forecast from East Texas on up into southern Tennessee of 3/4 of an inch to an inch and a half. That's from a system that's probably going to come through over the weekend and bring temperatures back up above 60. And we still have the same issue with the West, although we do have pockets of rain in Southern California potentially, and also into Arizona. We've got some patchy areas there of 1/4 to a half an inch. The Pacific Northwest is pretty dry. And speaking of dry, we seem to be, Joe, in a place where it's probably, going to be dry for a while. The core of the cold air is going to start to go out. We'll see temperatures start to try to bounce up on Friday, I think. But they're going to have a struggle here because, some of that Arctic air is going to hang back to some degree. So if you're looking for a big warm up, I don't know if you're not going to get one. You're certainly going to get temperatures that are going to try to trend back closer to average, but that's going to be that's going to be a tough fight going into this weekend. Thicknesses are still pretty low, and another low is going to develop off the southeast coast, which is going to reinforce that cold air to some degree. But we might actually see temperatures bouncing up maybe on Sunday and into the early part of next week before some weather fronts come through. But I don't see there's no real the models are not really picking up on any kind of organized storm systems. There's a stronger cold front for the middle of next week that has some colder air behind it and another cold high, but doesn't look like we have any storminess to deal with.
Well, the thing is that, and we, mankind or womankind, very adaptable, and we get acclimated to weather conditions very quickly. We are getting acclimated to a bout of very, very frigidly cold weather now, and we'll be getting used to it right on through tomorrow and tomorrow night. However, once we get to Thursday and beyond, a moderation, as you pointed out, Joe, is expected. Now, not a big moderation. Don't look for temperatures jumping into the 50s and 60s. That's certainly not happening. But a moderation begins on Thursday with temperatures area wide climbing to above freezing by Sunday. We're talking about temperatures in the upper 30s on Sunday. That'll be the first time in nearly a week that we get temperatures in the tri state area, widespread areas, above the freezing mark. Now, interestingly, I think I brought this up last night or the night before. Climatological records show that a noticeable warm up traditionally occurs between the 22nd and 27th of January in our area, the so called January thaw. Now, it appears that this year the thaw will come right on schedule, or schedule if you're from the United Kingdom. So, tomorrow, temperatures I've got for the lower Hudson Valley, I've got highs tomorrow of 16 to 22, but then we jump to 28 to 32 on Thursday. Now, that doesn't sound like really a nice spell of balmy weather, but when you make the comparison between 16 and 22 tomorrow, and you suddenly jump 12 degrees to the upper 20s to near freezing on Thursday, I'm not saying people are going to be dancing in the streets, but people are going to be doffing their heavy fur coats and parkas for something a lot lighter when they normally would not do that with those kind of temperatures. Temperatures will be hovering near freezing again Friday and Saturday, and then all of a sudden, boom, Sunday, boof, as Ed Norton would say, maybe upper 30s to near 40 on Sunday. That's when people will be saying, wow, it's like the return of springtime. Don't get used to it, though, because back into the mid and low 30s we go for Monday, and probably a tad colder on Tuesday. We'll be trending back downward again after this brief little push upward in the temperatures later this week and into the upcoming weekend.
By the way, I'm just looking at the 8 o'clock temperatures, Joe. Montgomery is down to 6, and they have clouds. I mean, I hope their thermometer's
Okay.
working. Montgomery is 6, Otisville is 10, Warwick is 12, Newburgh is 12, Stillers is 14, Brewster 14, Poughkeepsie 13, Albany 3 above. All the New York City temperatures are in the teens now.
Joe, you're coming
Go
in
on.
garbled.
Okay, I'm sorry because I'm moving my I'm kind of looking on a side monitor here. Um, uh, so I'm just saying all the temperatures in New Jersey are in the teens right now, but it's all cloudy there. Oh, Millville's got light snow, so that kind of verifies what's on the radar. So it's snowing in Millville, lightly, and Atlantic City's reporting flurries, 17 degrees there. And just looking further south to see if I see anything. No, no. So anyway, there is actually some snow. The other thing I would point out, give me a moment here, folks. Just give me 1 second. I have to find my mouse. Um, where'd you go, mouse? Oh, there you go. Hold on. Oh, come on. There. Oh, rid of that. Okay, I'm sorry. Um, just looking at the overall upper pattern, I just want to say a couple of things. One is that when you look at it through the long range, at least on the last couple of runs, it doesn't literally. I mean, we're going to see temperatures moderate because they have to. Okay, we still have a connection in the flow from Northwest Canada that kind of stays there for the next couple of weeks. So we'll probably have some cold air intrusions, the magnitude of which we don't know yet, but probably not of the magnitude of what we just experienced. So the upper pattern is, it's just basically northwest flow and dry, if you want to believe it. The other, the two other things I want to bring up is, interestingly enough, just looking at the polar vortex and the state of the polar vortex, because we've been seeing this thing, basically stretching and then unstretching and then stretching again, and it's happened about 5 or 6 times, and every time it stretches, we wind up getting cold air coming into the United States. And what's interesting to me, Joe, is the fact that The models at this level were forecasting the polar vortex to roll up into a tight little ball over the Arctic, which would argue for a warm up across the entire U.S. But the last several runs now have gone back to this stretching idea, and that there's another stretch that's going to be happening as we go into February. And in fact, on this run, the whole vortex actually drops down almost, but not quite, to northern Hudson Bay. So, I'm going to go on record as just saying, as far as where we're going in February, I'm I'm honestly not sure. I mean, there are times when you look at this stuff and you think you kind of know where it's going, and this I think is one of those times where um, I'm not sure what February is going to be. And being, by the way, let me just point this out. This is the thing that drives me crazy. You're the phone you're here on this watching this show because we do weather. And there's this bizarre fixation that with the long range. What's it going to be like next month? What's it going to be like 2 months from now? How about you focus on just what's going on in the next 5 to 7 days? Because as we just saw,
Right.
the system on Sunday really wasn't evident until we got to within 5 days or so that something was going to happen. Okay. So why are you, to just kind of, you can't look at this stuff and just sort of say, okay, well, the next 3 weeks, nothing's going to happen, or next month's going to be warm, or this teleconnection is going to do this, or that teleconnection is going to do that. I will say this. What was the long range forecast going back 2 months ago for January? Above normal for the whole, virtually the whole country. How did that work out for you? Okay. CPC does not, CPC on the whole, they do a fine job. And I don't know the intricacies of doing the long range stuff, but it just seems to me that they're on this role where they just, reflexively just do everything is above normal all the time and just keep going with it. And as a result, they didn't get January right. So I'll just put that out there.
And Judah Cohen, our friend Dr. Judah Cohen, a few hours ago on X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it, said this is one of the more notable Januaries in terms of U.S. extreme weather in a generation. A month of fire and a month of ice. And he wrote a paper, not apparently, he did. He wrote a paper 4 years ago. It's a funny thing. I brought up last week the fact that in advance of Sandy, there was a paper, at least one paper, that pointed out what could happen to New York City if they had a hurricane that took a most unusual track, which Sandy did, and causing all kinds of mayhem, which indeed Sandy did invoke. And in this particular case, talking about the unusual spell of extreme cold and snow versus the heat and the fire that occurred out in the west. Judah Cohen apparently, again, I'm sorry, I didn't. Not apparently, he did 4 years ago write a paper which describes the physics behind what is happening now, and is precisely. You heard the background.
Yeah, I know
You heard the background.
she did
My
her
wife.
she did her version of the bells ringing at
All right,
Notre
I'm going to
Dame.
ring the bell. I'll ring the bell. Ding, 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 ding. Thank you for hitting 100 likes. But anyway, Dr. Cohen wrote a paper 4 years ago which describes the physics behind what is happening now, nicely providing the context of these events within a changing climate now. If you go on Google and type in Judah Cohen, Judah Cohen, you'll find links to his Twitter post. This is the most recent post that he put up, and he also has a link to that paper. And I just skimmed through it very quickly, linking Arctic variability and change with extreme winter weather. It's a very nice, very substantial article that should be read not only by policymakers, but also taken seriously by climate personnel, if there are any remaining after this administration. But anyway, that's my little political comment there. Anyway,
Yes, it was a little
Dr.
political comment, but go on.
Yeah, a little, just a little. So
just a
anyway,
smidge.
if you want to read this paper, which again was put together 4 years ago, science.org, by Dr. Cohen, which has some explanation for, or as Ricky Ricardo would say, a logical explanation for what's going on. Go again to his Twitter or his X site, and the very last message that he posted has a link to this paper from, again, 4 years ago. And it looks like a very interesting paper. And if you're wondering why all this craziness is happening, he apparently has an explanation for it from what he wrote 4 years ago.
Joseph Tress on the chat board. Welcome to the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, saying that they have a dusting of snow in Princess Anne County, Maryland, about 30 miles south of Salisbury. And yes, we showed it on the radar that there is some stuff. It's got to be a combination of the moisture coming up and with the northeast wind, some ocean effect into the bitter cold air. So enjoy your flurries because you're not going to get into the main area of snow that's to the south. Christine is in the mid Atlantic, and she said, when I was growing up, winters were cold and summers were hot, which, they, Christine, I got to tell you, they still are. As far as I know, that's still the case. And we definitely need the cold to kill germs. Well, I won't disagree with you on that. Also, it helps not to have dry heat running around, running in the house 24/7. A little bit of humidity is required for the germ killing. Trust me on that one. All right, we're all done. I think we've made our points tonight, and
Yes,
we'll be back tomorrow night to make more points.
yes, we'll see what we have to talk about tomorrow night. Again, it looks like a very, for if you are watching us in the tri state New York City area, aside from the fact that we're talking about extreme cold for about another 24 to 36 hours, it's going to be a rather quiet week. We don't have much to talk about through next Tuesday. It could very well stay dry, generally fair, maybe a disturbance or two that passes by that brushes us with some cloud cover, case in point, what's happening tonight. But other than that, really nothing much to talk about, nothing on the immediate future for any major storminess coming our way. I do notice, Joe, that CPC is calling for a slight risk of extreme temperatures, cold temperatures in parts of New England and the Northeast for the 29th and 30th of January. That's later next week.
Right, that's
But
that next cold. That's that cold front that comes through early next week sometime.
right, that'll reinforce the cold after our brief little fling with seasonable temperatures by the end of this weekend. But again, that's nothing to write home about because we're already in the throes of a bitterly cold air mass that's happening here right now.
Light snow in Richmond, Virginia, reported by Lloyd, who also hit the tip jar tonight. Thank you, Lloyd. I think you're new to the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, so really appreciate it. I hope you're still watching because I think you may have hit that earlier, and I'm just seeing it now. So thank you so much for hitting the tip jar, and we hope to see you and in nights to come. And to all the new people that are on the chat board tonight, great that we see you there, and hope you come back. And Frank, I think it was Frank Scalera. You made the point that if you remember back in the fall, Joe, as I said, everybody was talking about how the winter was going to be warm and above normal, and I kept saying, I was saying how with everybody going on that bandwagon, it really wants me to take the other side of the trade, and so far I'm glad I did and took the other side
Well,
of
you may have been right in that regard. The only thing now that we're missing is, what'll make all the snow weenies happy is a big snowfall, and we're not quite to the halfway point of meteorological. Well, we're halfway. We're already past the halfway point of meteorological winter, astronomical winter coming our way in about another week or so with Groundhog Day. And Ruben Fairchild now says, "I always want Joe and Joe to work. How about take a few days off now?" And then he follows up by saying, "Take a darn vacation, Rayo. Go back to Antarctica." A guy could take that several ways, Ruben.
Right. Well, it's summertime in Antarctica. The days are 6 months long, so if you take a week vacation, you'll be gone for what, 3.5 years?
Well, I will tell you that
I'm
we
using
never
Bugs Bunny
really,
logic there.
when we were in Antarctica, Renata and I, we rarely saw temperatures go below 30, believe it or not. And that was, again, as you point out, Joe, the beginning of summer for them down there. We came back to here to the New York area, and a couple of weeks after we had returned, we had snow, and I think there was one Saturday where I was shoveling snow, and it was 9 degrees above zero. And I said, I think I posted on Facebook, I said, I'm going back to Antarctica. It's nice and warm.
Yeah, I hear you. All right, folks, have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow night at 7:35 p.m. Bye bye.
Buy bonds.